Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host, Mark.
I'm your other co-host, Billy.
I'm your other co-host, Josh, and today we are joined by a dear friend as we kick off yet another series. Thanks to Mark. We'll see if this redeems him from the Omen or not. But we're joined by our friend Zambies. Hello.
Hi, I'm a big ball of chaos. Okay, I'm a tiny ball of chaos, but still, everyone was introducing themselves. I was like, that fits.
Let's go with it.
Welcome, Mark. What have you brought us to talk about in this new
the OG Alien, the original Ridley Scott classic, with probably one of the most iconic female-led horror franchises ever.
Okay, like where are you putting that in like the grand scheme of things? Because I feel like you probably are going to get canceled from Nancy enthusiasts, from Nightmare on Elm Street fans. I might cancel you because I think Laurie Strode is the ultimate. But then you also could make the
without Ripley in the late 70s, you may not have them.
But look at this. Look at this. All right.
She was pre Laurie Strode.
Nope.
She was
Nope. Laurie Strode, 1978, my dude.
Could we put an asterisk and
1979.
say sci-fi horror?
You could say sci-fi horror, yeah.
But okay, so Ripley was a much stronger character than Laurie was, simply because Laurie Strode was more trying to survive. Or granted, Ripley was too, but she was also kind of a dominant personality, leading personality of the movie, where Laurie Strode was more of the stereotypical kind of, not housewife, but that kind of almost character.
Also, she was a teenager and naive.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm going with.
All right. Really, Mom and Dad are done fighting now.
I was gonna go get popcorn if you guys want to keep going.
I was over here. Zambi's just like, okay, hey, y'all got this.
Let me just say, I think this is going to be an interesting series because I have not seen a good chunk of these movies. I've seen this one and the two prequels. I'm not familiar with this series.
You haven't seen Aliens?
I've not seen Aliens. No, I have not.
And you haven't seen, what was it, Lynch that did Alien 3?
No, you're thinking of
Fincher.
David Fincher. No.
Yeah, Fincher.
No,
Fincher did 3.
I'm well aware of the careers this thing has launched. But yeah, I've shared my thing. What is everyone's Mark? You suck the life out of this franchise. You suck its dick. So I know how you feel. Billy, Zambies, what are your thoughts on this one?
Go ahead, Zambies.
Oh, so I had to go back and rewatch this because I remember as a kid I had seen a lot of the aliens. Like I grew up in a house where it was mostly men. I was the only girl with 2 older brothers and my dad, and they loved like sci-fi stuff like this. So I always got it secondhand. You know, I grew up on Star Wars and all this. I didn't get to see a lot of like the horror stuff at quite a young age. So I missed out on seeing like these movies when they were more popular. So I started to see them afterwards, and it had been a really long time since I had seen this movie. So I knew like the premise and everything, but I had seen like all of the like aliens, and I must be the only person that liked Aliens Resurrection because I thought it was hilarious. So like everyone's like, I hate it, and I was like, I went into it thinking it was a comedy. It was great, but like
my wife likes Resurrection too.
Yeah, it's, if you take it for what it is, it's funny. So I watched those a lot more than I had seen the original. So going back and watching this, I was very happy that like this was what, 79, that
Yeah.
there
Yes.
were like a very strong, prominent female lead. And like the whole movie, everything could have been avoided if you just listened to the fucking woman and didn't open the goddamn door. Like, hello,
The same thing.
the woman and the cat are the only ones that survive at the end. You wonder why they're the only ones with, you know. But anyway, but there were looking and watching it and thinking, oh, that's from like the 70s, you know, more 80s, but like they did it in late 70s, and the set design and everything looked really good. It did age well. Like for a movie, like the cost, everything, when you don't do things with all CGI, you start like you make the stuff, it still holds up to the test of time. The only thing I didn't like about the movie is there was a lot of nothing. Like the beginning was so slow. There was so much emptiness. It was quiet. You weren't sure if like your volume was on. Your ears were like, am I hearing things? Everything is eerie. I get that it's adding to that, but I do feel like there was a lot of dead space that didn't need to be dead space. So they could have got like the beginning was really, really long, and it did not need to be.
Which, before you go, Billy, like just building off of that, is really interesting for especially this time period where you look at most horror that came out in this time that we now deem as iconic, whether you're talking about Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left. All of those films are like at 90 minutes or under 90 minutes. This is almost pushing 2 hours.
Yeah, I was surprised with how long it was for I didn't think films usually were that long. Like,
Do you know if you watched the director's cut or the original, or do you know?
I don't know. I watched one. It was like 150 minutes or 100. Yeah, something. Yeah, I think it was 150 minutes that I watched, something like that.
Okay.
So probably the theatrical.
I think I might have watched the theatrical one. Yeah, it was very long. It.
That's
There,
the one
I
I
mean,
watched.
Okay.
it's almost, so it's a sci-fi horror suspense, and it's almost one of the first kind of slow burn movies too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
really
why
slow
they did.
burn.
Why they did.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But
I mean-
it's, I mean, it put a lot of the chestburster scene is amazing.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, some people know the story, some people don't, but nobody on set was aware of what was getting ready to happen except the director and that actor.
Whoa. That's John Hurt. And I'm pretty sure he was knighted, so it might be Sir John Hurt.
Well,
Just get it right,
either
please.
way, you know my track record with names. So don't give me shit.
But he went on to be like Hellboy's daddy, man.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
John Hurt. Sir John
But
Hurt.
the point is that whole chestburster scene in the galley or whatever, the director and him, and obviously special effects for setting it up, knew what was coming. Nobody else was in on it. So all the reactions you saw were people in character reacting to it live. They had no clue it was coming.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean-
and that's I mean, how iconic is that scene that they even copied it in Spaceballs a few years later.
I love Spaceballs. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's iconic. They copied it in Spaceballs, and then they copied it with Warner Brothers with the frog and something. I
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah.
And they copied it with so many different things. That scene is so iconic. If even if you haven't seen the movie, you've probably seen that a reference to that scene from somewhere else.
Yeah. Can I just say that since you were talking about actors, I did not piece it together until I rewatched it that's freaking Bilbo Baggins. I did not. I was like, why does he look so familiar? And I'm like, oh my god,
Ew, is it Bilbo?
it's Bilbo.
Or the-
from
It is
The
Bilbo.
Hobbit.
Or the
From the
or the-
original, from
Or
Lord
for
of the
the
Rings,
originals,
or
not Bilbo from
Okay.
The Hobbit. No. Bilbo from the original, the old
Yeah.
Bilbo. Yeah.
or he was also the head priest in The Fifth Element.
You know, but yeah.
Yes, that's right.
But that's
I'm just
like,
a big Lord of the Rings buff. So when I saw that was like all I could hone into.
Ian Holm. Yeah, this movie has like quite an eclectic like
Yeah.
just bunch of actors that would go on to be like super, like just absolutely like big superstars. Like obviously Sigourney and Weaver, but like Tom Segura, who plays
Bodyguard,
Dallas.
Top Gun.
Yeah, John Hurt did, Harry-Dean-Stanton, and as a David Lynch fan, I loved seeing him in here. He was probably one of my favorite parts in this movie.
Yeah, and Veronica Cartwright.
Yep.
She was in. We did Invasion of the Body Snatchers. She was in that.
I hated her hair in this. I know, but that's all I could think about. I was like, that is the worst haircut ever.
But it also it brought Geiger into the scene of design and art at the time. He approached the design of the alien himself as he talked about it in an interview I had seen, that people were approaching aliens as if they were human-like or humanoid. Nobody was really approaching aliens very much as if they were actual distinct creatures from somewhere else. And that's how he designed the alien, with like no eyes and the acid for blood going off the silicone life form and everything.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
All right. Which, two things. So here's what I want to do. I want to get Billy's like relationship to this movie, because we've gotten everyone else to say except for him, and then I want the conversation to come back to the design, because I have questions. Go, Billy.
Well, I mean, I love it just for the alien itself, but the scenes that they've already mentioned, where the alien coming out and everything, those were scenes that were iconic. I actually went back and rewatched it. I'll be honest, I'm like Zambies. It's really slow burn. The first time I rewatched it, I fell asleep. I had to go back and watch it again. I was tired, but I fell asleep because it was so slow. Because I forgot it was that slow. But I went back and rewatched it. I love the movie. I've always loved the movie. Just don't go watch it if you're tired. But yeah, I mean, this is an iconic movie. Gotta love Jonesy the cat, though. Jonesy.
Jonesy's the only one. Jonesy and Sigourney Weaver are the only two with common sense in the whole movie.
Yeah, and that's why they live.
I mean, like Zambi said, if they didn't open the door, we wouldn't have a movie. But that was, I love it.
So out of all the time we've been doing this, it's fairly well known that Evil Dead is my favorite movie franchise, with the Alien franchise probably being somewhere around second or third. It's one of my top favorite franchises. So I went, when they did the re-release, the 25th anniversary re-release with the director's cut, I saw it in the theater the night they released it. So it's one of those movies I have watched God knows how many times over the years.
Not this particular one, but one of the other ones is one of the ones you dragged me to the theater with that we watched in 3D.
Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we saw that on a 6-story IMAX.
We will get to
I know.
Prometheus though, but
But
I feel like I hated this movie the first time I saw it, and I hated it for the reasons that Zambi said, that like there's just a lot of dead space, pun intended, where it's Mark knows this, but like one of the horror franchises I loathe is Puppet Master. And I hate Puppet Master just because it's so I find it boring. If anyone can explain the Puppet Master mythology to me, comment wherever you're doing this. I would love to understand this one. But this one I feel like now, having been a little bit more matured in my taste, I have an appreciation for this film. This will probably be the last time I watch it. I don't understand how this is something that people watch over and over and over again.
But you're also not a big sci-fi horror person either.
This movie made me want to go back and rewatch Event Horizon.
Oh, now that's a twisted movie.
God, I wish
That's a mind fuck.
I wish they would release the director's cut of that. They have said they have found a VHS with the missing footage and original cut, but they haven't said if they're going to restore it or not. But it's essentially was meant to be Hellraiser in space.
It is.
And it was based on Warhammer.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
It was supposed to be the humans' first interactions with, the warp or whatever?
Did we figure out what the difference was between the theatrical and director for this one?
I know it's the scenes when they're escaping, where she comes across Dallas all like cocooned up against the wall. He's still alive. That scene's not in the theatrical. And I think all the theatrical cut stuff is right in there, and maybe a few small little conversations throughout.
Yeah, so I can also say that the theatrical cut is 2 minutes longer than the director's cut, which is a rarity. Typically, it's a director's cut is explaining a little bit more about like why they added scenes in and kind of how it enhances. And on the Blu-ray for this one, before you watch the director's cut, Ridley Scott actually kind of gets on and says like, hey, like we found some footage and there were actual things that we tightened up about this movie. If you're ever going to watch this movie, watch the director's cut of it. I don't know what's different. I've only seen this movie 2 times, but the director's cut is, it still has a lot of those mannerisms maintained, but it's a solid film.
I will have to say that I would definitely watch this again. I think I would skip the beginning like 10 or 15 minutes in and then start watching it. But this movie really does hold up in terms of like being entertaining, and if you're into horror movies or sci-fi or anything like that. But the main thing is the alien design is so iconic. Like 100%, like best design. The tail, that like little tongue that's a creature popping out, that slick head, like acid. Everything about this is, I think, pretty original to creatures that came before it, and then set precedents for a lot of creatures after it.
And then you have the face huggers that
Yeah.
on the face, where if you think about it, the design itself, the outline, it kind of looks like a stingray, but with hands to it. But that's where the acid it all came into when they cut the fingers, things like that. So
every part of it, from the egg to the face hugger to like the smaller little, every stage of development for those creatures is pretty well known, even if you've never seen the movies.
Yeah.
The funny thing is the cocoons that they come out of, the eggs they come out of, was designed after like a Chinese cabbage or something like that. A Chinese or Japanese cabbage.
Really?
Can I just say that guy is also a freaking idiot for like, oh, look, there's eggs. Let me go down and look at it. If that's an alien life form, I'm getting out of there. Like, why are people dumb? This is why I can't sit through a lot of horror movies sometimes, because I want to yell at my screen of how blatantly idiotic people are.
Well,
So-
at the same time, though, they had already come across the space jockey, who they later call the engineers. In this one, he's called the space jockey, that big fossilized creature.
Yeah.
So everything indicates that this thing has been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So why would there be anything still alive on it?
But then he sees things move after he fell in. I would have got my ass out of there. Like, I don't know. This is why women live longer.
Well, the other thing I
Okay,
liked is how they
yeah.
handled the AI, how they handled Ash, to where if you hadn't seen the movie or whatever, and you don't know as you're watching it, not until towards the end, that he's AI or he's a robot. You think he's just one of the crew, and
Yeah.
to me, he's a plant. He's there for Mother, so that he forces them to go to the aliens or locks them out or lets them in, just because it helps with Mother. That's what Mother wants, versus, oh, we're going to worry about our lives and try to make sure we're good first.
Were there alien, like, or was there robots, AI that they have developed in that sort of way? I don't know, before this movie? I didn't think so, right?
I don't think so.
And did that maybe stir up, like, what, Cylons are and Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that? Did people take influence from that idea?
I mean, I don't know 100%, but that's what it felt like. But
Yeah.
I think this was like in terms of like aliens and like robots and plants and stuff like that. I think this was the first time that you'd seen something of this caliber do it. There are probably arguably like smaller films that have kind of fallen into obscurity that explored similar things, but I think this was the first time that we had actually seen something where this kind of like dug its heels. And I think because of how influential, as we've been talking about in the last 25 to 40 years, how influential this film has been, is all comes back to a lot of these things. And like, I wouldn't have even said that like, oh yeah, robots, the plant, like, but a lot of films kind of like saw that in this genre, kind of took from that.
So, Mark, didn't you play like Alien Isolation or whatever game?
So Alien
And-
Isolation is actually a direct sequel to this.
And it's got all the
Alien.
voices.
No. It has all the sound effects and scenery of Alien, and it takes place like 12 or 15 years, something like that, after Alien, where her daughter has gone to look for her, and she's still kind of missing in space, because Aliens takes place 40 years, I believe, after Alien. So Isolation takes place in the middle.
I know that a lot of them were credited for voices on the game from this original movie.
That's because you find tapes from the black box recordings and things like that.
Gotcha.
That is, and then the ending, like, spoiler, but the ending, but like, she's just in space. And
I think-
it's like setting up. Did they think they were going to do a second one? Did they lead to that? Or did they just like drop it off? And then that kind of created the craving of people wanting more. And that led into making more films?
That I'm not sure. I think Aliens was, what was Aliens? Was it 86 or 88?
It was it's in between Terminator and T2, so I think it's 86 if I remember correctly.
It's 86. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's one of James Cameron's second movies, but one of his most iconic too. Between
Yeah.
Terminator and Aliens, everybody went, "Who is this guy?"
So that's a 7-year difference, which is really
Yeah.
big for like a sequel.
Yeah. And they, once again, for the most part, they used nothing but traditional effects. There were a few computer, but
Which I
I-
love. I think when you look back, those films that use the traditional stuff are usually the ones that still look good.
And I believe the tagline for Alien, where you were talking about nothing, it was so quiet, nothing was really happening. I think it was Alien that the tagline was, in space, they can't hear you scream.
Yeah. I understand the creative choices they use to make it quiet and stuff like that. And it makes sense, but because it was so prolonged, it like, I don't know if it just sensory wise, it kind of bugged me because I wanted to hear something. I wanted to know that something was coming or it wasn't like some weird tech issue, you know?
No, I get that, and I'm right there with you. I'm almost curious if there is that 7-year gap between Alien and Aliens, because I'm almost kind of questioning if Fox learned their lesson from Planet of the Apes, because that film was so massive when it came out that within a 10-year span, they had done 4 sequels and 2 series and had kind of really overloaded themselves a lot. So then comes along this massive success of Alien, and they're probably trying to figure out how to do it right, because there's so much time that's in between each of these sequels, for better or for worse, as we'll get into in this series.
I did a simple Google search and because I want to know the answer to this. And basically, AI is going to tell me lawsuits, management changes, and lack of enthusiasm from 20th Century Fox. But diving in, I can see that, yeah, it's like it kind of giving me feels of like the Deadpool movies where it's an idea, people want it, but then it's like not done right. So it keeps changing hands until it finally falls into the right lap and gets created the way it should be created.
Yeah. Which, I mean, one of the things that I really learned from Evil Dead when we covered that last year is I would rather a studio and director take their time and have less stories in that universe and have them be good than churning out. Because going back to Planet of the Apes, there's like one like really solid sequel. Like the rest of them are like fun and kind of dumb, but like the majority of them are nowhere near as good as the first film. And as I mentioned, like I'm not really super familiar with this one, but a lot of people always kind of harken back to Aliens is better than Alien. So, I think that time frame might benefit, but we'll find out next week when we cover it.
I know the big reason a lot of people say Aliens is better is because it was more action oriented, where this was more suspense and dread and atmosphere oriented.
Which I don't think it necessarily does a bad job at that, by no means. I think this one, it earns every single thing it does, but much like Zambies said, like there's a prolonged effect for and maybe it's just watching it with like modern eyes, where everything is so fast paced, and even for times, even more modern day slow burns like Hereditary or Midsommar, like a lot of that stuff is like there's always something going on, so there's always something to keep you going, whereas a lot of that stuff is absent from this film.
I think the thing for me personally that is the big difference is Aliens developed into more of an action movies. And when they first started, they were doing the suspense. And I get that, but suspense thrillers benefit more from mind games, from having giving clues, having the viewer go, oh, is it this person? Is it this? What leads this into this? And this was just like, there's a creature let loose on the spaceship. Like, it's a survival game. And for that, I think that's why it was a little less actually suspenseful and more drawn out for me. I could be wrong, but that's the way I see it.
I think you're right. I'm just glad I'm not alone in that, where Mark's like, this movie's a masterpiece. And I'm like, it's not, though.
There are a whole lot of people that agree with me on that.
I think for its time, the
fine.
product of its time, and if I, like you said, if I was looking at this from eyes back then in '79, I still think it's a masterpiece. I do think that I give so much credit to this film for what it accomplished and what it did. That doesn't mean that there isn't parts that I don't like and would change, but I am also a product of a different time. So I'm seeing it in different eyes, going like, okay, so I think you can appreciate something, think it's a masterpiece, but not also think that it's perfect and what I would enjoy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Zambies though, because it's if I'd watched it at that time, it would have been, oh yeah, great, this movie's perfect. But now we've seen so many movies come after it, and probably, I don't want to say piggyback off of it, but use things out of it that we're so used to the references or everything that it's doesn't hit as hard as it probably did when it came out. It probably at the time it was cutting edge. Probably nobody had done most of what they did. But now we've seen so many movies that kind of used Alien as a starting point that we've seen so many things that are newer or different that when you go back and watch it, it's a classic, but you notice certain things like, oh, okay, well, this is slow, or this could have been a little bit better, or maybe change this, but not really that the movie's bad, just that it's, and Mark's over there laughing.
I also think y'all like to just give me a hard time sometimes.
There is that. I will say that this film, there's no denying this film's influence. I mean, we talked about that chestburster scene earlier, Spaceballs. There's been a number of things like Ash's eventual fate. There's portions of even like Ash's fate that like reminded me of like The Thing, that would come out a couple years later. And I think that there's absolutely no denying the influence that Alien had on not only pop culture, but also on, what is capable. And Zambies brought this up earlier, but I think part of the reason that one of the things that really works really well is the fact that this film feels timeless. When you look, this movie takes place in the year 2122. The thing that always really bothers me when someone does things that are set in the quote unquote future, there's always an element of that feels like it's a product of that time. Like when you go and you watch like futuristic movies from the 90s, this is how people in the 90s imagine the future. Whereas this one, because you don't have like a bunch of like computer programs or outside of Mother, there's not a whole lot that makes it feel like it's, a 70s imagining what the year 2122 is going to be like. And I think that's part of the reason that this film has stood the test of time is not only its influence, but the fact that it feels timeless.
Except for the computer screens.
Just a little bit.
Just a minor
and
detail.
And the DOS. But no, the set alone, I mean, that set alone is timeless.
Really good.
When it first comes up, it's one of those sets that I don't think it matters when you watch this movie, that it just, you watch it and you're in space. There's no doubt about it. Where like Josh was saying, some of the 90 movies were a product of their time. This one, just, you watch it, you can watch all the sets and everything. They did fabulous. We're not doing CGI or anything else to it, from what I know.
Completely fabulous.
Yeah. Fabulous.
I think it's also okay that a film is not perfect, but that the ideas are so unique that it creates, like, it inspires other films to take from that and grow and do things. So like, I think for a stepping stone into Aliens, and then they were like, okay, what worked and what didn't work? We like this. Let's go and make new films off of this. I think we can appreciate and be like, yeah, they lay down all those groundwork for the future films and future films that aren't even in the franchise. So we can appreciate that even if it's not perfect, it is still a masterpiece, as Josh or Mark would say.
So,
and
Go
the
ahead, Mark.
franchise did well enough that it actually went on to spawn the comic book series, which came out later, and it did well enough there that they started tying it into the Predator franchise.
Yeah, Alien
And-
versus Predator.
Yeah. So they're two iconic movie franchises that they tied together because of how well they did and moved them to comic books to kind of build the universe even more.
So one of the things that got brought up earlier is the fact that, characters within this movie are essentially studying the organisms and willingly kind of putting themselves into danger. And I've been kind of like, I feel like Billy doesn't have a personality quite yet in the show. Mark is the wing it guy. I'm the analytical one. So Billy kind of just shows up in podcasts. It's cool.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I was thinking about coming into this movie is, how do you bring the conversation of mental health into this without it just being like, oh, they're in space. Isolation has an effect on mental health. And I think that's a worthy thing. But I think that scene in particular where they're studying, and kind of always putting themselves in the sense of danger, especially when you have other passengers in the Nostradam that are like, maybe you should stop. I think it's kind of a great metaphor for chasing after really empty, fleeting concepts that we think are going to be beneficial for mental health, whether that's social media likes or the opinions of others or the validation of others, rather than actually seeking what's going to make us happy and safe and be in a spot to where we can grow as individuals rather than just chasing the coattails of other people.
Well, one of the other things is not being heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's sitting there telling them not to do stuff. They're not listening, and it makes you feel unvalidated because you're trying to help them, protect them, and they're not listening to you. And I mean, they all die. So, but that's one of the other mental health things about it is if people don't feel heard or they feel unvalidated, that can weigh on you too.
That is also like piggyback offing that. It's also thinking like second guessing yourself. She says, I don't trust this person. He ends up being a freaking robot. So yeah, obviously there's something, trusting your own gut and instinct when everyone tells you that that's not what you like. No, it's fine. But it's also like, she said, oh, I can't open the door. She's thinking ahead. She is not in the moment of like, oh, someone is hurt. We need to get them inside. Yes. And it's like pushing away that feeling of, oh, I have to be caring about this individual or like having empathy or compassion. Oh, he's hurt. But if you tear that down, she does have that because she's thinking in the future of like, yes, we need to save this guy. But if we let him in, everybody's in danger. And I need to think about the greater good and everybody else, including like myself and the ship, and everything's at risk when everyone else is thinking, oh, let's just bust open the doors and save this one person. And I know we can all be there. We can all be like impulsive and wanting to help right away. But at the same time, like having to step back from that and be the tough person that says, I can't do this because everybody's going to be at risk. You're going to think like everyone's going to be at you and you're going to be pinned as the bad guy because you're not doing what you need to be doing to help in this one person right now. And so going along with that, a lot of people just go along with that because they don't want to be seen as a bad guy. But in the end, you're not actually the bad guy. You're trusting yourself, you're trusting your instincts, and you're doing the right thing. So like it's an internal battle of like society and what everybody else wants versus what you actually know is right.
I think it's something
Ripley's also, I think, the second in command of the ship.
Third,
And
I think.
Third.
Was she third?
Yeah, Dallas, the other dude, and then her. I don't remember the other dude's name at the moment.
Well, and I believe she was the chief science officer. Wasn't she?
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
I thought that was a robot guy.
That was the robot.
Ash. That was
Yeah.
Ash.
That was Ash. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, what I was getting to, now that all my stuff is wrong, she was simply enforcing protocol. That was the general protocol. And that's part of being in charge. And that's one of the things I was trying to put together with the difference between Ripley and like Laurie Strode, is she was more of an in-charge person, where Strode was just kind of running the helpless victim survivor girl by the end. Where Ripley,
He wasn't
sure,
in charge. That was the thing.
she
was
had
third in
that
command.
she had that mindset, she had that kind of air about her as a character, that she was one of the people in charge on the ship. People listen to her a lot. Yeah
But I think, from even looking at it from like a final girl perspective, I think you have a lot of that stuff is because, as Zambies was saying, like she prioritized like her safety and kind of like stepped back and kind of like got to looked and studied all the variables of the situation. And sometimes that's what you have to do in life. We need to normalize prioritizing self-care, self-love, rest, and really evaluating our self within X, Y, or Z circumstances. Is this really going to be beneficial for me? Am I going to end up being hurt? Because how many relationships have we endured in life where they've come up fruitless because we haven't been able to prioritize our own self-worth or our own self thing, or we did something that was meant to be loving and caring and compassionate, but it ultimately kind of got taken the wrong way, as we kind of see here with Ripley and the other passengers.
Speaking from someone who's on the spectrum, you can also kind of look at her character and be like, she follows the rules, protocol, everything like that. She's keeping her emotions for the most part in check, thinking about things. She picks up on other things. People ignore that. They dismiss it. Like the vibe checks, not trusting, basically being like, no, it should be like this. And if you think about stuff like that, those are things that some of us do get pushed aside and think that it's not valid in our emotions, but it is.
Okay. I want to bring up a point that Mark made earlier with the character design. So Mark, since you're a super fan of this, let's bring this into a more modern concept. So when you look at I don't remember the exact name, but you look at the monsters from A Quiet Place. They get from point A to point B, and they get violent by hearing things. How does this mofo get around? Like, he has no eyes, he's got no ears. Like,
so that was later showed in designs. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I've seen some of the designs where there actually was eyes, but they're like under the kind of headpiece, like the skull has eyes in it.
It looks cool, and like it does create really iconic moments, but I'm like, I don't understand like how this alien kind of maneuvers around. Does it have like echolocation kind of thing? Like it's one of the things
Google
that,
says yes.
oh, it does
Yeah.
have it.
Echolocation.
Wow, really?
They
I've
see
ne-
like bats.
I've never looked into it.
Yep. That's what it is. They
You're
detect
welcome.
light in the darkness.
That's fascinating.
I love little tidbits and facts like this. That's why I was like, I need to know. You mentioned something, and I'm like, I need to know the answer.
I would love to see the original character designs that have like features of like the eyes, because I can't imagine this with the eyes. Like the sequences where you get to see the xenomorph just
crap.
look too freaking good.
Oh, I got more on this. So the xenomorph has pheromone detection, so it can sense the pheromones of its prey to help sense its location, as well as to communicate with other xenomorphs.
I was gonna say, doesn't it sniff? My guess would have been smell, because you like see it breathing and stuff.
Vibration sensing, which is similar to vibration and electrical impulse detection. A lot of aquatic life does that. Sharks. And
Don't they see in like ultrasounds, sort
What?
of? Like when
the
like if you
xenomorph?
well, I mean like echolocation, like the image they see is similar to like what you would see in like an ultrasound. Like you can see the shapes and you can see everything, but you don't see like color and stuff.
So in one of the movies, they show a chase scene from the alien's perspective.
Oh.
And it is in color, but it's kind of distorted and very kind of tunnel vision.
Yeah, that's what I was envisioning. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I vaguely remember that.
But yeah, it looks like they do a lot of their detecting and everything from vibrations, pheromone detection, electrical impulse, and things like that.
Did it bother you that when they were trying to get the stuff to go into the escape pod, that they were making so much fucking noise? I was like, you're literally just signaling where you are. They're like throwing shit and everything. I'm like, it's going to, like, there's no doubt about it. It's going to find you.
Well, I mean, they're also super panicked.
Yeah.
They have no idea how this thing is hunting or how it even works. So they're just in full panic mode. Get our shit and get out of Dodge.
Why? All right. So I have a few other questions. Why is it always sweaty or wet?
Mother turned off the AC unit and she called her a bitch for it. You remember?
Okay. That's
I love
fair.
that part of the movie.
Yeah.
Are you
Then she go
talking-
back and say,
It makes
"Mother,
it
I
more
put
intense.
it back and turned it back on, and it still went to self-destruct."
Yep.
You talking about the xenomorph, the alien?
Yeah. Like every time that you get like a good shot of it, it's always like you could just see like perspiration.
Glistening.
It's glistening.
It's a silicone-based life form. So I feel like it wouldn't like look the same way human flesh does, being carbon-based life forms.
I think you're reaching at this point, Mark.
No. They come out, I believe they actually
I mean, I would have believed that.
it's either in this one or two that they actually say it is a carbon-based life form.
But like,
Or
okay,
sorry, a silicon-based life
It doesn't
form.
look like it has pores. Maybe it doesn't know how to
Yeah.
sweat.
maybe.
Maybe it's condensation on its slick carapace.
Mm-hmm.
Big
This
words.
is the last thing that I will say. One of the more entertaining scenes is I love the fact that there's a scene in this movie where Ripley almost dies by a porno mag, and that they have just an entire corner that's
the
just
70s.
dedicated to
I saw that.
porno.
Fun fact, one fun fact I know about this film is that she refused to shave her bush, and that they had to hire someone who spent hours to CGI out it. I don't know if that's actually true, but I read that once and I was like, if that is true, that's amazing.
What does
I
that
have
matter?
read that too.
It's like the 70s. Like everyone had like a fro
I know
downstairs.
that's how it is, but I thought
Yeah.
that was funny. Also, why is her underwear like plumber's crack when she turned around too? I was like, you can't pull that up. Why are they so tiny?
70s, who knows?
She's like, wouldn't you like to know?
You had like I feel like everything in the 70s had a little bit of a porno like feel to it.
Oh.
I swear.
I mean,
Halloween
even
did.
even
I mean,
Dallas
to-
had that big mustache, that
Yeah.
big 70s porn stash.
Hmm.
Yeah. 70s.
I will say that I do appreciate this film a lot for the fact that the people who lived the longest ended up being two chicks and a black man. And I'm like, that's probably got to be unheard of for that time. I don't know. But I was like, hell yeah.
even now, because like I mean, a lot of like the quote unquote modern rules that we now know of in horror are technically not super old. They, Men, Women, and Chainsaws didn't come out till I think like 92, 93, which is where a lot of those things kind of came from. That book, and then obviously most famously the scene from Scream. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that the last three people here really kind of stand out and really go against the grain for a lot of the films that are coming out at this time.
Did you ever see Deep Blue Sea?
I did.
Dude, LL Cool J was like, I see movies, the black guy always dies. He ends up living. Spoiler. But yeah, it was just funny because that like ingrained in my mind. So every time I watch films, I like see things now that like get pointed out to you. And I just feel like for 79 to have such like strong women, and they, except for like the scene at the end where she had to have tiny underwear. Other than that, none of them were really sexualized. I mean, they had porn mags and stuff, but the actual characters themselves and stuff like that held their own.
And Sigourney Weaver is also not that tiny, helpless female of
Never
the time
once.
period either.
Never once. She was always in
she's
charge. Yeah.
In anything, she's always been more of the very upfront and demanding respect kind of character. Plus, it doesn't hurt the fact that she's like 6 foot plus tall. Doesn't hurt that at all. But she's
muscle mommy.
Yeah.
She's got the RBF.
Death by snooze do.
The body is willing.
Yeah.
But the spirit is willing, but the body is not.
But like seeing these characters growing up, like for me, it felt great. I loved it. And it's funny, like, that the people now who say they love stuff like this, that are like gatekeepers and stuff, and it's like, do you not know? Like, we didn't just develop strong female characters. They were around. They were there.
Yeah, and you've got, who was it? Jennifer Lawrence. There were no strong female leads before I did Hunger Games, and everybody's like, Ripley's raising her hand.
She was like the biggest. Not Jennifer, Ripley.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Laurie
Sigourney
beat her by a year, though, so say what you will.
But she wasn't a strong character. She wasn't a strong female lead.
Doesn't matter.
Was the damsel in distress. There's a difference.
She earned the right. You got to see it grow with her over time.
Having that arc is nice. Having character development where you become the strong person is nice. And I do appreciate that. But there is also a point where you just want to see a badass chick be badass, and she doesn't need to be a damsel that suddenly realizes she's badass. Can she just not be that way? How many movies do we have with dudes that are weak and then suddenly become strong? And I'm not talking about getting superpowers or finding
Captain
jitsu.
America.
No. I'm talking about like mentally realizing that, like, no, I can be strong. No, because that's ingrained. Men are supposed to be strong by society standards and stuff. So they start out with those characters, and then some of them develop into being, tough idiots, and then they become caring. And I just like, there's a time and place. We need both. We need all. But it is kind of nice to see women that don't need to be squishy.
Mark,
And in all fairness, Captain America is the poster movie for steroids.
I
don't like Captain America.
I will see your Ripley argument and raise you Foxy Brown because it came out early 70s.
Ooh.
Well, that was also, then you're getting into the blaxploitation
I am.
stuff.
I am aware.
That's a completely different genre, but yes, Foxy Brown. And then if you want to go that route, you've got, was it Lady Snowblood, the female samurai movies from the 60s or 70s?
Sure. All right.
But who's more known as the strong character?
Foxy Brown, obviously.
How many people outside of cinephiles are going to know Foxy Brown?
I'd never seen the original, but didn't they have a remake? And I think I saw the remake.
I didn't even know they had a remake.
I think so. Wasn't there? This is not a fever dream.
You are hearing it here first on Abyss Gazing. We are experiencing another Mandela effect.
I swear to God that they made. I swear to God.
1974. That's the only one on here.
No, I have seen something.
Pam Grier did go on to do a few action leading lady roles. And I think a lot of them were based off Foxy Brown.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing.
Oh, no. It was Jackie Brown.
Jackie Brown, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, that was a different one. Never mind. Yeah.
Still kind of made in the same vein, I think, if I've read interviews with him. So, all right. Well, Zambies, where can people find you online?
If you really want to find me, you have terrible taste. Hi, I'm Zambies on Twitch. I stream twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I have a YouTube at Zambies, on Instagram and other socials. I'm zambies-decays because Zambies was taken. And if you like art, nerdy things, and chaos, I'm your girl.
I like chaos.
Her streams are lots of fun.
I'm fun.
Mark, where can people find you hiding?
I actually did update Instagram.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Is that what prompted Billy to come on Instagram?
He's on Instagram now?
I've been on Instagram for years. I'm in the shadows.
I mean, you kind of do look like a Force ghost right now.
It's the light.
You're like an old Jedi master. Come back to like, just tell us the ways. Oh, like we're both wearing Star Wars shirts.
But yeah, I've got my Instagram at Titanium Juggernaut Painting. Yeah,
I use my letterbox. It's VA Boy 99.
You guys can also find me on Letterboxd as well. It's Captain Nostalgia. You guys can find Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcast from. If you want to see video versions of this, subscribe to our parent company on Patreon. All of that money goes towards not only giving you guys extra content, but also helps us get mental health education into things like conventions, film festivals, etc. It's patreon.com/victims and villains. Just search Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcast from. But you guys can find that parent company, Victims and Villains, as I mentioned, also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcast from. Until next time, remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.
Dun, dun, dun.